Welcome to this video in which I'm going to go through the process of creating this ruler CAD file using Techsoft Design V3. And you can see here that this is my CAD file finished, and then below I have a second version of this in which I have applied color codes that will determine how the laser cutter interprets this CAD image. And very briefly, in this case, it means that anything that has a black fill is going to be engraved, anything that has a red line will be engraved, and anything that is blue will be cut. Black lines will be ignored. So the result of this when I send it to the laser cutter is that it's not quite the same CAD file here, not quite the same product, but you can see this is a ruler that someone else has made. And this is made from 2mm thick clear acrylic. Okay, so let's just minimize everything there. And what I'm going to do is start from scratch. So I need to be loading this piece of software called Techsoft Design V3. And rather than clicking on the program that's already running, I'm going to press the Windows key on my keyboard. And I'm going to type in TECH. You can type it capital letters or lowercase. It does not matter. And we actually have two programs on the system here by the company called Techsoft. We're going to go to Techsoft Design V3. Okay, now by default, my system here loads with a 5mm grid. Yours will not. By default, you will have a 10mm dotted grid. In fact, I think if I just go to set default, yeah, there we are. That's what yours looks like. So we need to, well, you could work with this grid. The problem that I find is that when I zoom in, and I am using a wheel mouse here. So to zoom in, I can just use a mouse with a wheel, should I say. So I can just use the wheel mouse here to zoom in and out. And as I zoom in, to me, all the little dots that define the grid disappear. If you're working without a mouse with a wheel, you might have to use the plus and minus zoom in, which is up here in the top right corner of the screen. So I don't like that setting, so I'm going to change it, and I strongly recommend that you do the same as well. I'm going to right click on where it says gridlock here in the top right corner. I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to change the grid spacing here to 5 in the X and 5 in the Y. I'm going to keep my step spacing as 1mm because that allows me to have this broad grid structure and then this finer grid control when I need it. I'm going to make sure that the style is going to be lines and the color is going to be this pale blue at the top. Now, again, you could choose any color you want here, but I find that pale blue there is subtle but clear. So that's the one I'm going to choose. Confirm that, and there's my nice 5mm grid. Now, another reason why I like that 5mm grid is because if I am working on, and for some reason here my document camera has just finished, just crashed, but if I'm working on gridded paper, I was going to show you some gridded paper there, then the gridded paper has the same 5mm grid. Okay, let's come back here to that. I'm just going to bring that onto my extended desktop. There you go. Okay, so I am going to use my wheel mouse here, and I'm going to zoom in onto the top left corner. But again, you can use the plus and minus zoom tools over here to do that if you don't have a wheel on your mouse. And what I'm going to do is start to draw out the outline for my ruler. Now, this ruler is going to have a very specific dimension, which you can see here. It's going to be 30 in width, it's going to be 190 in length, and it's going to be 180 millimeters of actual centimeter and millimeter units. So let's just get that in right now. So on the left hand side here, I'm going to come to tool A3. I look at these tools in terms of columns, column A, column B. Over here on the right, I've got column C and column D, just like a spreadsheet. So I'm going to come to column A here. I'm going to come to the third option down, A3, which is the shapes tool, and that's going to give me some rectangles. Now I want to just click on the screen where I want to start to draw this. I'm going to left click once, and then now as I move my mouse around, I can see that I'm creating a rectangle. Now to create this the correct size, I could count the squares, but down here in the bottom where my mouse is now highlighting, there's something called relative, and this is giving me the relative grid reference for where my mouse is. There's also abs. This is absolute. Let's look at absolute first. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to look down here. If I put my cursor in the bottom left corner of the screen, the absolute, so there's the absolute settings here. At the moment it's blank because my mouse isn't on the paper. But if I move my mouse onto the paper to the bottom left, I can see the absolute grid reference now is 0, 0. And as I move to the right, I can see that the X value increases now 35. And if I move up, I can see that the Y value is now 55. Now, I'm not looking at the absolute grid references. What I want to look at is the relative grid reference. So I'm going to just zoom in on where I was before. And if I just put my mouse over the starting point of that rectangle, I can see the relative grid reference there is 0, 0. So that's where I first clicked. And as I move my mouse to the right, I can see the X value of the relative grid reference goes up to 40. And as I move up, I can now see that the relative grid reference on the y-axis is now 25. So I'm going to pull that all the way to the right. I'm going to go to 190 millimeters in the X, and I want to go 30 millimeters in the Y of the relative grid reference, and click. So there's basically my rectangle for my ruler mapped out. Now let's double check those dimensions are correct. I'm going to now come to tool B1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is the dimension line tool in the top left corner of the screen. I'm going to click on this, and now I'm going to click once in this top left corner. I'm going to click once in this bottom left corner, and I'm going to click a third time with my mouse in the middle. What I've now got is a dimension line. So what I have here, this is the dimension line here with the arrowheads. This value sitting on the dimension line is the distance in millimeters, which in this case is 30. I know that because when I drew this rectangle, I had the Y relative grid dimension. Dimension is 30 millimeters. And we also have two extension lines, one at the bottom and one at the top. And these align with the shape that we are dimensioning, extend out, and then define the endpoints of the dimension line arrowheads. Just notice as well here that there's a little gap between the extension lines and the actual shape, and that's important. That is part of the rules of dimensioning. You need to have a little 2 millimeter gap in there so you separate the extension lines from the actual details of the product. Okay, I'm going to go back to the dimension line tool again, which is tool B5, and now I'm going to add a dimension on the bottom of the rectangle of my ruler. So I'm going to click on this bottom left corner once, click on this bottom right corner once, and then bring my mouse into the middle, and then click a third time, and that now defines that the length of this ruler is 190. Okay, absolutely fantastic. Now, let's have a see. What else have I got to do with this? I'm going to add on here some filleted corners with a radius of 2.5. And I'm going to do that because I want to have a nice smooth corner to my ruler here, so it's comfortable to work with. So let's now come to tool B3, which is this one here. Now I'm going to show you something new here. If I hold the left mouse button down, the range of tools expands. In fact, that's the wrong tool. I want to come to B2. I'm sorry, the arcs tool. Okay, this tool here, B2. If I hold the mouse button down, again, I get a range of tools, and I want to go all the way to the end here where I get the filleted arc between two line tools. Now I can define the radius I'd like this to be, and the radius is 2.5. Now I don't have to type in millimeters. I can just type in 2.5 there. Click on OK, and now I'm going to click on the first line for which the fillet is applied, and then click on the second line where the fillet is applied, and it applies that little filleted radius of 2.5 millimeters. So again, I can click and click for that corner, click and click again, and the last time click and click for that corner. Now let's get some dimensions on here. So let's come back to the dimension line tool here. Now I'm going to expand out my options. I'm going to move along until I get the draw a radius dimension. There are actually two of those. I want to go for the second one, and I'm now going to click on that corner and then bring this out a few squares and then drop that in as a radius of 2.5. Now technically it should say R2.5 times 4 or 4 times because I've got this applied 4 times, but I can't make that modification in Techsoft Design, and we're going to have to just rely on the fact that there's one dimension fillet, and it's hopefully obvious that the other three are the same radius. Okay, I'm just going to finish this little video here by adding in next the millimeter and centimeter marks, and then in the next videos I will look at adding in the numbers, etc. So to get in the centimeter marks, first of all, let's just zoom in a little bit on this. I'm continuing to work with gridlock here. I'm going to go to the line tool, and with the line tool here I'm going to come in 5 millimeters from the edge, because remember I'm wanting to have a little bumper here of 5 millimeters. That's why the measurable units centimeters only go to 18 centimeters, whereas the ruler is 19, because I have a half centimeter on the left as a bumper and a half centimeter on the right as the bumper. And I'm now going to draw a line in there using the grid, which is going to be 5, 10 millimeters in depth. Okay, so let's now add in the 5 millimeter line. So here I'm going to add in just one square like this, and then I'm going to add in a whole centimeter line. Okay, so this is now defining my 0, half a centimeter, 1 whole centimeter. And I know that because in my gridlock settings, I've got each square is 5 millimeters. So as a centimeter is 10 millimeters, I need to have 5, 10 millimeters, 1 centimeter overall. Hence, in here, I'm going from 0 to 1 centimeter, with the 5 millimeter slightly larger than the millimeters. Okay, so I now want to add in my millimeter marking. So let's now come back to the line tool. And at the moment, obviously, with the grid in its current format, I'm snapping to the main grid. But remember that I had defined my step lock, or left my step lock as 1 millimeter. So all I need to do here now is change from grid lock to step lock by clicking on tool D2 there in the top right corner. And now what I can do is zoom in on this, and I'm now going to start to draw some millimeter markings. Now, before I draw this, I'm just going to press the escape key to escape doing that. Just notice if I'm looking down here at my absolute grid references, okay, this, well, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just trying to look at the fact that it was moving on 1 millimeter, but I'll do it a different way. You can see here that here it's going to jump on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters. My cursor there's moving across in 5 millimeter steps, and hopefully you can see that happening in the absolute or relative references as I'm drawing that. Anyway, here we go. Let's come across 1 millimeter. I'm going to click once, move my mouse pointer down, and I think I'm going to make that 3 millimeters long. So again, down here in the relative grid references, I'm looking to see that that says -3. And I'm going to draw another one, and a third, and a fourth. Okay, so that's my first 4 millimeters. Then I've got my 5 millimeters slightly longer, and let's finish off the other millimeter markings here. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, absolutely fantastic. So that has got my first centimeter mapped out with individual millimeter markings. Now, I'm just going to make a quick modification to these centimeter lines here. As I've got this in step lock, I'm finding that these are rather long compared to the other markings. So I'm going to click this line here, and with step lock turned on, I'm going to pull this back 1, 2, 3 millimeters. So that line now is 7 millimeters in length. Let's do this differently. Let's actually just draw this again. So I've just selected that line, and I'm going to press the delete key on my keyboard. Mac users, please realize that Windows computers have a backspace and a delete, and that you want to press the delete key there. And I'm now going to come to the line tool, and I'm going to draw this again. So clicking on the grid point here, and then come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now I need to apply those dimension lines, not dimension lines, those centimeter and millimeter markings all the way to the end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select just those markings. I'm not going to select the 0 centimeter marking. I'm going to select the 1 to 10 millimeter markings. You'll notice now that they all turn purple, and I've got this kind of bounding box around it. Okay, now I could copy and paste that, and I could then continue to place these in position. And just notice here when I pasted that, I've got step lock turned on, so it's snapping with this 1 millimeter grid layout. If I put that to grid lock and I paste it, notice now that it just snaps straight onto the grid, and I can now just place all those in. So that's one way I could do it. But I'm going to show you another way as well. I'm going to delete all those centimeter millimeter markings. I'm going to select again just the 1 to 10 millimeters, and I'm going to come to the transformation tool, which is tool A6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is right 3, 4, 5, 7. Sorry, A7, which is right here, transform. I'm going to hold the mouse button down, and I'm going to go to a draw a rectangular array of the selected objects. And I'm going to have it so that this is going to have a total of, now I want to have here 18. I think I want to have 18 columns. One row. Each spacing on the x-axis is going to be 10, and I can leave the y because I've only got one row anyway. Let's click on OK, and let's keep my fingers crossed that this is going to work. Yes, it does. And that instantly duplicates that initial set of 1 to 10 millimeter markings all the way to 18 centimeters at the end. Okay, so there's two ways of transferring those markings all the way across. Magic. Of course, you could have just drawn them all by hand. That's completely up to you too, but I just find that's a little bit faster. Okay, that's the end of this tutorial. Please move on and have a look at video B because I'm going to continue the creation of this ruler there.